What's up, family? Welcome back to another episode of the 1/4 Careers Podcast. Here we strive to help you identify the career path that's right for you, ultimately contributing to at least 1/4 of your overall happiness. I'm Xavier, your host, and I am here with Aayana. Aayana graduated from Alabama A&M University, my HBCU, with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science in 2019. She also earned her master's in political science with a focus in race and ethnic politics from Purdue University in 2021. Now, Aayana works as a diversity recruiting lead at Accenture, a global consulting and technology company. Aayana, welcome to the pod. Really appreciate you stopping by.
You need some horns to drop.
Yeah. What's going on?
Some horns. I am good. I am stressed but blessed.
Forever and always. We always gonna be blessed if we're gonna be anything, right?
And definitely stressed.
Yeah, I try to leave that one out because I'm like, I don't even manifest that one, but I hear you. Me too. So we making it work.
Space, stress is inevitable, but we're good though. How you doing?
Good.
Doing, brother?
Dad, so you already know fatherhood is amazing, and we're just getting this pod underway. So really appreciate you stopping by. I know every time we talk, I'm always teasing you and asking you if you in the country because I don't know where you at because you one of those travel girlies. So
yeah, really big feeling. I spend most of my time in the house or out the country, but I'm at home. Sure. Getting settled in to being in Maryland now for work. So
yeah.
Now by next week, I might be somewhere else. So stay tuned.
Absolutely. No, can't wait to see where you go. Well, again, really appreciate you stopping by. To get started, I want to talk about your background. I know recruiting means that you have to talk to a lot of people, have to be personable, relating to a lot of folks. So knowing you in undergrad, how would you unpack your background and how that prepared you for where you are and what you do now?
Oh, man. Let's just even take a step back from undergrad, because I feel like a lot of people's story with me start at A&M, but no one knows the Aayana before the SGA president, all the titles and everything. So honestly, growing up, I was a very shy person, very, very shy. And honestly, despite me being so shy, I just paid ample attention to people. Because I didn't talk a lot, I observed a lot. I paid a lot of attention to what was going on around me, whether it was good or bad. A little bit of the bad, but just paid attention to a lot of things around me. Pay attention to how people interacted with one another, and with me just being so keenly focused into people, I just started to just expand my mind a lot more. A lot of times when I talk to my family and stuff, they refer to me as, how old people be like, oh, they done been here before? That was me. I just was just so, people just consider me smart, but I was just so intuitive and just paid attention to so many things that, naturally just fast forward into me being at A&M and trying to find my passion as a very shy person. It just made it a lot easier because I was already in tune with everything that was going on around me. I paid attention to what was wrong, what was good. I paid attention to the people around me. So transitioning into wanting to be a lot more than that shy person, I felt like it was hard but easy for me because I already had that foundation. So when I did come to A&M, I was not what people thought I was. A lot of people thought I came to A&M and I just had everything together. I came in and was just this bubbling personality, or I just had a lot of stuff. So my journey at A&M was easy. I came to Alabama A&M with a tote full of clothes and some food my mom got me with the food stamp she had left, and that was it. I didn't have anything. I had some bedding that they gave me at church, my little clothes, some food. My aunt, she did a lot of couponing, so she had some toiletries that I could take, and that's all I had. I didn't grow up with much, so coming into A&M and just seeing the space that was around me, seeing a lot of people that had more, seeing people that was of different, different people on the socioeconomic spectrum, and just being around people that looked like me, it made me feel like I could accomplish whatever I wanted to do. So Like I told you before, I sat in my room and I was talking to my mom, and I grew up doing pageants. So she was like, "Oh, you need to be Miss Alabama A&M. Like that's what you need to strive for." And I was just like, "No, I want to be SGA president." I had no idea how I was going to do it.
Wow.
At this point, even thinking about it, I don't even know why I wanted to be SGA president. I just knew that I wanted to do something that stood out and that really took me outside of just being the shy person that I was. I had no idea how I was going to do it either because I came to A&M with no friends. And then fast forward 4 years, everybody on my body. So
The
it's like, it's
whole
just
campus
so,
was your friend.
yes, it's so crazy to just think about the transition. But from the beginning, I knew I just wanted to do something more. And because of how intuitive I was, I just created a plan for me to position myself to be in various spaces. So, like, I was like, okay, if I want to be SGA president, I got to be in SGA. I wasn't in SGA my first year, but I was in SGA as a sophomore, junior, and then SGA president. It's like, okay, what ways in which that I can position myself to be successful so that I'm no longer a statistic or a end up being a product of my environment, that whatever I can do to make sure that I don't go into this space, that's what I wanted to do. So me joining the honors program without with the GPA, but without the ACT score, and going in there with Miss Holloway and just expressing, my passions and my drive and everything got me into the honors program. Going to choir and be like, I never was in a choir in high school. We didn't have choir, but I can sing really well, and singing for Dr. Carney and getting a scholarship, like really just betting on myself, even though at the time I didn't know I was betting on myself. I was just trying to do something out of survival so
Out
that
the
I could be
mud.
more, yeah, straight out the mud, so I could
Oh,
be more
God.
than my environment, and was just doing everything I could, like literally. Like I had a internship my freshman year, and I was doing something that had nothing to do with political science, and me wanting at the time to be like a lawyer or whatever the typical political science people want to do, be a lawyer, go into politics, whatever. I just wanted to make some money during the summer and get the internships on my resume. So I was doing all types of stuff, just really, like you said, getting out the mud so that I could position myself to be the person that I saw myself to be, despite the elements that were around me, despite the doubts from my father that didn't want me to go to HBCU because he thought HBCUs were less than. So when I decided to go to Alabama A&M instead of Alabama, I was told that I wasn't gonna be shit. I was gonna amount to shit. Like so many things that was like going on in like the background with my family, the lack thereof when it came to like socioeconomic for me, even being on campus, having to work the whole 4 years at school, like having all those things like battling me
Yeah.
while still trying to be successful made me who I am, but it also made me want to do more for people that are coming out the mud like I was. So yeah.
Yep. No, I appreciate it. Definitely inspiring. And I think some of the things that some people knew, but also just that deep dive, it's a lot of stuff I didn't even know. And, when we look at our people, when we look at our classmates at HBCUs, there is a commonality of get out the mud, being scrappy. I know when I attended A&M, because I think we probably started right around the same time, the same class.
We did.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
honest.
We started the exact same class. Like,
We're right here.
I feel there were the height of the conversation about HBCUs being lessened around 2015, I think had hit like an all-time high, or it at least
Yeah.
just coincided with us attending. And I think I even had a thought of, people are saying this, but hey, A&M gave me the money. I'm showing up. And,
Yep.
I just knew that me going to HBCU was not going to define my success. And honestly, as soon as I got to A&M, like the words are indescribable of how much of a family you feel that you're surrounded by, of how empowered you feel you are, seeing so many people on campus who look like you, the professors who are riding for you, who will cuss you
I'm
out
talking
dang
about
near and like
riding.
tell you to get yourself together, whereas maybe other
Yeah.
people would be a little bit uncomfortable. Like I think there's just so much beauty in that. And also demystifying the fact that HBCUs have amazing resources and that there are companies who understand the value of HBCUs, and they're the ones who are getting the best talent. They're the ones who are leading in the world today. So getting to your story, I think it explains so much of your success. It shows how you're built. It shows growth as well, because you didn't have everything together, but you were fearless in the way that you put yourself out there, in the way that you decided to be driven and get things out the mud. Like I'm sure that you realize unexpected growth every single year getting to where you are now. So kudos to you as a Black queen. It's inspiring to so many people. I appreciate you and really appreciate you sharing that on this platform too.
Yeah, definitely. And like to your point, like demystifying like HBCUs not being the best. And like I'm just thinking about 2015. We just didn't have like the hype that everybody got now when it comes to HBCUs. Like y'all don't even understand it. Even probably people before us in
Yep.
the years before can talk about like how much they had to get out the mud and like just to see how the environment has changed around HBCUs, but hasn't changed at the same time is like it's just so interesting to me. Especially, and I think this just goes directly into my work being a
Yeah.
diversity recruiting lead and
Yep.
just seeing it from a corporate perspective. Like I see the passions for HBCUs and I see the need for companies to dive more into them. But I also see the missteps that often happen when companies trying to interact with HBCUs and not fully getting it,
Yep.
but putting the dollars behind it, which matters because that's what we see a lot when interacting with our HBCUs from a corporate perspective. Like we got the money. Some people might got more money than us that's putting the money towards HBCUs, but they're not leaving the infrastructure to ensure success for these students. We're just
Yep.
grabbing them so we can take them to our company, but we're not doing the work and the programming to ensure that they are successful where they're at and they could be successful with us or they could be successful with somebody else. It's all about, okay, we're going to drop this 200 grand on the business school and we're just going to grab your students. That's it.
Yeah.
So it's like it's such a give and take when it comes from that perspective when engaging with HBCUs in corporate. But that's a whole nother
honestly,
thing.
actions speak louder than words. And I think in addition to giving money and sharing resources, intent always transparently comes across. A lot of companies don't share their intent or they provide a surface level intent of we just want to hire your students, but you see from that maybe the lack of intentionality behind sustainable partnerships. Is just a one moment in time, so on and so forth. Obviously, not complaining, appreciate all the resources that HBCUs get, very deserving, and there's more to come and should be more. Also, there are a lot of questions that have been unanswered around how do we successfully recruit, how do we successfully invest and build sustainable partnerships. But hey, it's almost like you understand kind of the conversation flow here because you already touched on your job. That's exactly where I wanted to go next. Diversity recruiting lead. What does that mean? How would you describe that to people?
Yeah, so how I would describe diversity recruiting lead is that I sit at the center of everything diversity and recruiting. Like when it comes from an experienced hire side or from an entry level, like I'm at the center of the conversation. I feel like I'm like the referee to ensure that everything is going well and making sure that whether it's from experience hiring and specifically entry level where a lot of our new hires come from, that they are hiring diverse people, that they are using diversity networks on campus, and that one issue that I'm seeing, not even just with, consulting companies, but across companies, is that ensuring that recruiters that are going to these campuses or even diversity champions from a senior manager level or a manager and director level is actually being intentional with how they interact with Black and Brown students. Because what we're seeing just from the businesses across is that, like mentioning with our conversation before, we have these recruiters out here. We are sending money, but these recruiters don't reflect the individuals that you're supposed to be recruiting. So you're sending a white recruiter to go to meet with the Caribbean Association at X school, but they don't reflect those people and they don't feel comfortable recruiting those students because they don't have a shared experience. And that is something that we're seeing a lot and that contributes to the breakdown of our relationships, specifically not at our HBCUs, because I feel like companies are being more intentional with sending Black people to HBCUs, but are missing the piece when it comes to our PWIs, where there are still Black people, but because we still get these large amount of students from these PWIs, there hasn't been a lens on, okay, how diverse are the people that we're getting from our PWIs, and not relying on our HBCUs to serve as our diversity connection points.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm at the center of all of that at my company. So,
yeah. No, that's amazing. And something I do want to ask you about, I know that there are so many conversations going on right now about affirmative action, about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And there's typically a connotation that I've heard before, not sure if you've heard it, where when we think DEIA, a lot of times individuals' minds immediately go to the Black and brown community, or specifically just Black people, Black African-American folks. And there have been some qualms with the lack of representation within that effort. Or maybe another way to put it is, I think people think DEIA diversity just means Black people. Would
yeah.
you say that from a diversity recruiting leads perspective that, you know, you interact with many underrepresented and underserved communities who are being targeted from a corporate way? So can you help to speak to your experience on that to confirm or you know, confirm, is it only Black and brown people, African Americans, or is it more communities?
No, it's definitely more communities. It's the individuals that are on the margins of the marginalized. That's what I like to say. Because we know who the marginalized are. We know it's Black and brown. But we're forgetting the people that are in the intersections. And that's where a lot of not only diversity data, but just diversity efforts get lost. So we're not looking at, when we look at Black, we just look at Black, but we're not looking at like the amount of Black women that are not, you know, being considered for managing director roles, or not being considered for, you know, senior manager roles. We're not talking about the Latinx women that are being left out of the conversation, or even the trans Black women, trans Black men. We're missing everyone that's on the intersections of these groups. So yeah, it's definitely something that is often difficult to do in recruiting, because they oftentimes are like very small groups that are within even like universities or diversity networks. But it's something that needs to be paid attention to, because those are often the groups that feel the most marginalized within their companies. Those are the groups that are less targeted for opportunities within their companies. And those are the groups that have less efforts that go towards them specifically, because we put things in just a box. We don't look at individuals that flow within all the boxes. We have women, but women typically focuses on white women. We have Black, but Black typically focuses on Black men. But Black women, they're in both. And don't even be a Black woman that is queer or trans. Like, it's like oftentimes people feel like you have to choose, but I'm all of these things. Like every day I walk this earth, I'm not just Black, I'm not just a woman, I'm a Black woman. So just trying to figure out how to ensure that we are making up for those gaps when we're on campus recruiting, or even when it comes to an attrition and retention perspective, making sure that we are, you know, continuously helping those people move through the business is also essential too. So those are conversations that we're having within our business. Can't speak for everyone else, but I know just even just doing general research, there has been a lot of conversation on how to make up and improve our strategies for diversity when it comes to focusing on those intersectional type groups.
I love that. Very well said, especially on the complexity of intersectionality. You know, I talk to my best friend about that all the time, who's getting his PhD in social psychology, and he's studying exactly that intersectionality of the Black queer experience. And I think all companies can get better at recruiting diversity, how they strategize for diverse talent. You know, being at Accenture, both of us are there. Like, I do think Accenture is a place that, even though they don't have it down perfectly, you see a lot of intentional conversations. You know, you've talked to some of the things that you do in your role and how you view it. I think that really highlights the strategic nature and kind of the intentionality behind how we do it here. And I know that there are so many other places who are even doing it better, other places who are doing it just as well. But I think the acknowledgement that a collective effort of improvement is needed across so many different organizations. I think that's really helpful, but I think this is a great start. So I really appreciate you kind of sharing some of that detail, because I think so many people don't see diversity recruiting that way. I know I probably
they
couldn't have said
don't.
it as well as you did, but it's extremely eye-opening and just another inspiring tidbit. So with you talking about some of the conversations that you have, how you walk the earth, when you talk about just the person you are embodying and serving in the role that you're in, what are some of the skills and maybe certifications or just general skills that you've observed are needed to be successful in your role? Some of the skills that you have, some of the skills that you're continuing to acquire. How would you talk about skill sets that are needed for individuals who are wanting to prepare to be a diversity recruiter?
Recruiter. Oh, it's so many things, because there's not a one size fit all type of model for just even starting as a recruiter. Like, our recruiters come from so many different backgrounds. Like, there's not a degree that's like, oh, this is my bachelor's in recruiting.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, people that, like, a lot of people on my previous team in entry level when I was still the HBCU recruiter, like, a lot of them came from like a lot of HR, but then just a lot of social science backgrounds like me, a lot of, sales recruiter type backgrounds. But I think at the center of being a recruiter is just having more interactions with people. So those type of, if it's like HR, it could be so simple as, you working for a firm as an office assistant, or you being involved in like the human resource aspects of it all, whether it's like actual human resources, or like me being in EEO, equal employment opportunity. I had interactions with people a lot more than I typically would. And then that threw me into being more involved in recruiting efforts, affirmative action efforts. So like really those like people facing type roles is typically where people start off before transitioning into recruiting. Because I often think about like recruiting as like, there's like a veil around recruiting. Like, only certain people seem to be able to get into recruiting, which is so weird because there's not like an open door to it. A lot of the recruiting roles, just to give people perspective, because I know a lot of people ask me like how I became a recruiter and how I even got into recruiting and how to even get into recruiting. Oftentimes, a lot of the recruiting roles are internal. So you'll see a lot of roles that are like on the websites and everything, especially LinkedIn. You just put in recruiter and you find like 50, 11 recruiting roles. However, a lot of those roles are typically internal roles. They put them out there so that, we say that we put them out there, but more than likely, they are just hiring someone internal to fill that role anyway. So that's just to give y'all, some type of perspective on, some game on like how it works. So that's why it's important for me to tell people it's good to get in to a company first and then transition into recruiting. Every now and then there's a person like me or like others that just got into recruiting externally just by happenstance. But like a lot of times those roles are internal. So like if you're like starting in human resources or starting in a different area of a company and you express your interest in being in recruiting and you involve yourself in recruiting efforts, diversity efforts, and then a role comes up because you had such proximity to diversity recruiting or recruiting in general, that would be your ways to get in. So sometimes it's not the external route. Sometimes it's not like a central way to do it, but there is like strategies that you can take in order to get you into that recruiting space. So having that experience with working in human resources or just having some type of proximity to recruiting and then transitioning to those spaces is typically the way that a lot of people go into getting into recruiting. Now, as far as the skill sets to be successful in my current role, I would say wanting to be leadership facing. So really putting myself out there to engage with leadership is what really made me be able to walk into this role a lot easier, because I am very executive facing. When I tell you very executive facing, I talk to all the executives from our various platforms. So you have operations, strategy, and consulting, and tech. I'm directly engage with all those people. The only people that I don't directly engage with is C-suite. So that gives you perspective. Like everyone between C-suite and assistant manager, which is me, those are the people that I engage with daily. So being fearless, tugging on that fearlessness from when I was an undergrad
Yep.
to interact with a lot of people in leadership has definitely helped me be successful in this role. Another thing is having a data analytics background. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, having data analytics. People just don't know, because diversity data is something that is new, but it's so important to how we function. Like if we don't know where the numbers are or where these people are coming from, like how do we supposed to know that, okay, so over this past FY24, we see that we had a 2.5% decrease in AA and we're stable in everything else. How do we increase our numbers going to FY25 for AA, and what programming we need to do for that? That's all data analytics. Like you have to be able to understand data and want to understand data in order to be able to see the big picture and create the strategies for those types of problems. So that's the biggest thing that I have seen that's been definitely beneficial to me being a role, because I love data analytics. That's like my thing, building dashboards and all that type of stuff. So yeah, that's been my jam. That's been my jam. And then and then it's also just the typical stuff. I always wanted to be a learner, not shying away from the criticism that comes with being in such a visible role is something that's big too, because there was definitely individuals that were considered for my role before me, but didn't want that heat. And I'm all about the heat. I'm like, bring the heat to me.
Take that. You
Period.
Built for it. So, been there.
Big Aayana, okay? Right. So you got to be able to want to take that heat and just be just know what your purpose is too. Know what the purpose is outside the role and for the role is also helpful too. Just being in a leadership capacity regardless, or even not even a leadership capacity, just being in corporate spaces, not in corporate spaces. If you had a small business, if you had a startup, like understanding like what your priorities are for this role, as well as your priorities to ensure your success, whether it's getting the next promotion or gaining all the skills that you can at this company to take somewhere else. Just always keeping those at the center. Because what I have learned and what I talked to my mentor about today is that the business is always going to be the business. Nothing is ever going to be fixed. And I think that was the biggest thing that was on my mind coming into this role is like, okay, as a diversity recruiting lead, I'm going to make sure that we are a well-oiled machine around diversity recruiting for any aspect, whether it's experience or it's entry level. But the key to all of this stuff is that nothing is ever going to be fixed. You're always going to be trying to fix the next issue that is coming up. So while you're doing this, which is a part of your priorities for your individual job, while you're constantly on this quote unquote hamster wheel, what are you doing for yourself to ensure your own mental health success, your own professional success, and your own personal success while you're in this role? Don't get so caught up in the hamster wheel of trying to either please others, try to do your job better than the next person, trying to be the standout, trying to be the one that everyone comes to, because they're going to do that anyway. Everything that's in corporate or any space is already set. So what are you going to do to prepare yourself for the next is what I had to learn while, taking on this role. And what I learned really quickly, because I've only been in this role 2 months, to give y'all perspective.
Dang. Yeah. Speaking like you're a seasoned vet, right?
Period. It's been 2 months.
Right. I love that. So one call out for all the examples you shared of data, numbers, all of that is more examples, not necessarily disclosing of company information, just in case anyone's out there worried or anything, but still nonetheless, giving the gems, giving the really important, insightful information. I mean, I'm learning as I'm talking to you. So it's so good to know. And it also helps you have even more respect for the work that's being done. You could call it the good old fight, right? Like if you're not in diversity recruiting, if you're more of a beneficiary of said recruiting, this is really cool just to like learn about what's going on behind the scenes. You mentioned the conversations you're having with executives. You mentioned how important data is. And may I remind those, yes, the data is important for Aayana to do her job, but in society, we got to have data for everything when it comes to DEIA, right?
Everything.
If
Yes.
not, you can't prove it. There's a lot of people pushing back on it. So data is the ultimate equalizer. And sometimes that's not even enough, but data is really important. Data is really important.
Definitely the equalizer, yeah.
For sure. So you also really touched on the skills, and that was a very thorough explanation. One of the last topics I wanted to speak on, one of a couple, is what does the career path look like for a diversity recruiting lead? And it may be different company to company. So like, what's maybe some of the general heads up we can give people about? Usually you start here as a talent acquisition specialist, you go to this role, and what does that career path look like?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I'm thinking about it like in my head, the roadmap for, just to give an example, for like AFS. So typically that roadmap, it just looks different for everyone. So for me, I started off as the HBCU recruiter for the entry level team. And I started doing that in 2022. I came in as a contractor for HBCU recruiter. So in between that time of me starting as a contractor and then transitioning to this role in like April, the first part of the year where I was in this role, I was just really just learning the role. However, the more and more I was in the role, that's when I learned about the opportunities for HBCU recruiters, and that we have like a different lens on us, which oftentimes I think it's good to have like that self-awareness because you can then position yourself better. So with me understanding that because HBCUs have like such this lens and this microscope on us, like I'm going to do like the most banging stuff as an HBCU recruiter for Hampton so that y'all know that I'm here. Y'all know the different things that I'm able to do as a recruiter. But then I'm going to also flex my muscle with my public speaking because that's my bag, and show y'all
big bag
that I'm really out here and that I can speak well. I can talk on various topics and just really show the various facets of me. So I started to get into that more so last fall for the beginning of our fiscal year when we was going through campus. So having very creative and outside the box events. One of the events that I had at Hampton, because that was the school that I was focused on, was the barbershop talk, where I brought in local barbershop barbers. I said barbershop. When I brought in local barbers and local stylists to do free haircuts and styles on the students, while we also had an open conversation about navigating corporate as Black people.
Man,
yeah,
using a bag for that one.
Yeah. I was in my bag.
Crazy work.
Nasty work. Yeah. So that was like one of the most standout events that eventually the people within our business on, like, from mostly the MDs wanted to have for the Black History Month that they did have for the company. So I set a precedent on campus that ended up translating into a big event that we end up having within our own, internal functions or whatever. But, those are the type of things that I was going for, because I knew that I no longer wanted to be a recruiter at that time. I knew that there was more for me to do and that I had already mastered being a recruiter. Like, I know how to be a recruiter. So what else can I do? So that's when I started to do things that, set me apart within the space, and understood that I had that freedom to do so. And I just did it. So going on into, I could say like March of this year, a role opened up. So oftentimes when things are internal, roles open up and roles don't open up. Roles really only open up when people are moving up or out. Up or out. And just to give you perspective of like just stepping back when it comes to like HBCU recruiting and just recruiting in general, there's not any upward mobility in recruiting. So like if I'm in entry level recruiting, like I can't move up outside of my career level or my pay, or another word would be pay grade. So I can be like at let's just say I'm at a CL, because our CLs work backwards. So I could be at a CL 11 and I can go to CL 10, which is a higher pay grade, but I can only go to that pay grade, which will make me a senior recruiting analyst. But that's just it. Unless I go into being like an entry level lead, but there's only 2 entry level leads on the team. So
Mm,
there's like no upward mobility right here. So I had to look for other opportunities either in recruiting or within the business. And when I
okay.
talk about the business, I'm talking about either within tech, consulting, those type of things that are outside of recruiting or corporate functions.
Okay.
So my role opened up once my mentor Lauren moved up to being the HR business partner for one of our portfolios.
Hmm.
So once she moved up to being one of our portfolios, that's when that role opened up. I applied for it, and because I set myself up for success before I even knew this role was available, it was like a no-brainer to put me into the role. So a lot of that came with me advocating for myself, understanding my self-awareness and where I was at and the opportunities that I could take to position myself to be successful. And that speaks to young Yana back in
Okay.
2015
Yeah.
and what she did to make herself stand out, in undergrad and get where she wanted to be. So yeah, it's just a
That's
testament
dope.
of who I am.
Nah, that's dope.
Mhm.
That's dope. I appreciate you sharing that. So, one thing that we kind of glossed over, because I know that we've talked about this off camera. You said that you were in your role for only 2 months, but you also have some more recruiting experience. So, it sounds like someone earned a promotion. So big bag Yana, congratulations on that. On that
A
note,
promotion within a year.
hey, we go hard. And the other thing is, so small plug is my wife is also in recruiting, so I can identify with you talking about
Mm,
kind of the lack of upper mobility, the upper out type thing. In a way, there's upper
mhm.
mobility, but you kind of have to go about it the way that you've described, and you have
Yeah.
to take advantage of opportunities. Sometimes you have to step adjacent to kind of step cat a
Mhm.
corner to step up, like being scrappy.
Mhm.
The other thing that I think is really important that I know you and I both agree with, and many others do, is what you've done here and what you've done in your career is you've landed and you've expanded, which I think is something that is very typical of those who are really active from
Mm.
HBCU backgrounds. You rarely find one person doing one thing at a HBCU if they're like in a leadership position.
Mhm.
You're usually doing about 5 or 6. Sometimes we can't
Yeah.
help ourselves. Sometimes it's our detriment, but it's really the thought of making an impact. So when you talk about the barbershop and
Mhm.
hairstylist or stylist example, that speaks from the intention of I'm trying to create impact. I'm not doing things for the sake of doing it. We busy enough as it is, right? So I think that that's really
Mhm.
important, and there are a lot of benefits from that sincerity around wanting to drive impact. Is it benefits you in your career and it helps motivate certain moves you make. So I think that was really
Mhm.
spectacular there. And if anything, Aayana, you've mentioned who you are, you've mentioned where you've been, things you've done, some of the things that drive you, some of the growth that you've experienced. Who inspires you? Whether it's in your profession, whether it's in life, who inspires Aayana to continue to be who she is?
Oh, that is a good question. Honestly, this might sound like crazy, but I feel like my inspiration is just not one person. I
Okay.
feel like it speaks to me just being observant and just noticing everything that's going on around me, that I allow my environment to inspire me. I allow, the shifts and changes in just our world around us to inspire me as a person to keep going. And I think that also contributes to me traveling a lot, because it has expanded my mind and my perspective on life itself, which I feel like sits at the center of why I continue to go hard, or why I continue to do less, why I continue to, put the mission of the workforce when it's needed. And sometimes when I'm just like, I'm just focused on Yana. Y'all do what y'all need to do. Like it just expanded my mind so much just being out the country and just seeing how people move in life and how the stressors that we have in the United States is just not their stressors. Like how we put so much emphasis on things that are like very vain, or we center people instead of ourselves. We center work instead of ourselves. When at the end of the day, if we left this earth right now, they'll be looking for somebody else to be diversity recruiting lead within like a month. So I think just being able to center myself and allowing my mind to expand in so many ways and just taking in the importance of my mental health has inspired me to continue to be a good person that translates into me being a good daughter, a good future partner, a good future mother, a good sister, a good employee. So I don't really have people that inspire me. I just try to find inspiration within myself, because what I can say, we can have a bunch of people that inspire us, but at the end of the day, when shit's hitting the fan, we can't figure something out, when it's just us and us alone in a dark room, all we got is ourselves and who we pray to. That's all we got. Like we can watch as many inspirational videos as we want to. We can aspire to be Obama, Michelle, Julie Sweet, whoever it is. We can inspire to be all of these people, but if you're not centered within yourself and know you and using yourself as your biggest inspiration and reflecting on your journey and how much you have grown from this person to this person to that person, how the situations that you had when you were growing up is no longer your situations, and how you overcame so many things, all of the other people and their journeys, that's not going to inspire you to do better if you still tormented within yourself and can't
Yeah.
find that love for yourself and find that motivation within yourself.
No, absolutely. And big plug for therapy. Like I was not one to really
Mm-hmm.
jump into that, but I've been doing it for a year. It's definitely made me happier, to be a better dad and other roles in my life. So I think it's
Yes,
really important.
Father.
A lot of the stuff that you spoke to, it's really powerful and it definitely hits. And hopefully, people are able to kind of pick that up and be inspired to find more inspiration within themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
Aayana, this was amazing. This was everything that we had hoped it to be. You feel me? You feel me? It's
Yes,
all love
period.
forever and always, the Bulldog crew. And I just really
Yeah,
appreciate you stopping by.
I love it. This was great. I feel like this was just amazing. It flowed well, like I knew it would. Just talking to
Yep.
my brother, and
You feel
I do
me?
hope people are inspired by my story and my journey, and continue to
Shoot.
be inspired by all the stories and journeys that you're broadcasting on your beautiful
Yeah.
podcast. Period.
Nah, for sure. Hey, if you need one person to be inspired, I'm already one of them. So mission accomplished already. So
Period.
this was dope. I appreciate you stopping by and we'll be chopping it up soon.
Yes. Thank you for having me. Bye,
Yeah,
y'all.
absolutely. Talk to you later. All right, people. Really appreciate you guys watching. Feel free to do a like, comment, subscribe. Really hope you enjoy the video and there are more to come. All I leave you with is stay happy, stay blessed. Peace.